How I accidentally discovered that one tiny mistake in my sleep schedule was silently destroying my energy, my mood, and honestly, probably my health too, still surprises me even now. Because for years, I believed I was doing everything right. I mean, I was trying to sleep enough, trying to relax, trying to take care of myself the way people say you should after 60. But one night something happened that made me realize the problem wasn't how long I slept. It was when I slept. And if you're watching this right now, let me ask you something real quick. Be honest with yourself for a second. Do you go to bed at the exact same time every night? Or does it kind of depend on the day? Maybe one night it's 10:30, the next night midnight. Sometimes even later if a show is good, or you fall into that endless scrolling on your phone. Because if that sounds familiar, then you might be making the exact same mistake I was making. And trust me, this is the kind of mistake nobody talks about, but sleep experts warn about all the time. And I didn't realize how serious it was until my own body basically forced me to notice. It started small at first, nothing dramatic. Just waking up feeling a little tired. You know, the kind of tired where you think, hey, maybe I just didn't sleep enough. But then it kept happening again and again. Even nights when I was in bed for 8 hours, sometimes 9. And yet every morning I felt like someone had drained the battery out of my body overnight. My brain was foggy, my energy was low, coffee stopped helping the way it used to. And I remember one morning standing in the kitchen, holding my mug, just staring out the window, thinking something is wrong here. Because this isn't normal tiredness. This is something deeper. And the weird part was I couldn't figure out why. My diet was okay. I walked every day. I didn't drink much caffeine late in the day. I thought I was doing everything people recommend for good sleep. And yet every morning felt like waking up after a long, exhausting flight, even though I never left my bedroom. And then one evening, I had a conversation that changed everything. I was talking with an old friend of mine who used to work in healthcare. Sharp guy. The kind of person who reads medical journals for fun, which honestly sounds crazy, but he loves that stuff. And he asked me a question so simple, it almost sounded silly. He said, "What time do you go to bed every night?" And I laughed a little because the answer was kind of obvious. I told him it depends, sometimes 10, sometimes 11. Sometimes midnight if I'm watching something interesting. Sometimes earlier if I feel tired, and he didn't laugh back the way I expected. He just looked at me and said quietly, "That might be your problem." And I remember thinking, wait, what? How could that be the problem? Everyone goes to bed at different times, right? That's normal life. But then he explained something that honestly blew my mind a little. He said your brain runs on a biological clock. Not a suggestion, not a guideline, an actual clock. And when your sleep time moves around every night, your body doesn't know when it's supposed to power down. So it starts releasing sleep hormones at random times. Sometimes too early, sometimes too late. And the result is, you can spend 8 hours in bed, but still wake up feeling like you barely slept at all. And the more he explained, the more it made sense. Because when I thought about it, my bedtime really was all over the place. Some nights I'd fall asleep around 10:30. Other nights I'd still be awake past midnight. Weekends were even worse because I'd stay up later watching movies, then sleep in the next morning. And I always assumed that was harmless. Actually, I thought it was healthy because I was catching up on sleep. But apparently, that idea of catching up on sleep is mostly a myth. Your brain doesn't like catching up. It likes consistency. It likes routine. It likes knowing exactly when night begins and when morning starts. And when that pattern changes all the time, the body gets confused, almost like living in a different time zone every day. And when he said that, something clicked in my head, because that's exactly how I felt most mornings. Like I had jet lagged without ever leaving the house. And that realization was both surprising and kind of frustrating too, because it meant the problem wasn't age. It wasn't stress. It wasn't some complicated health issue. It was something incredibly simple that I had been doing wrong for years without even realizing it. And the funny thing is, millions of people probably do the same thing every single night. They think sleep is about hours, but experts say sleep is really about rhythm. The body has a rhythm just like music, and when the rhythm is steady, everything works better. Your brain releases melatonin at the right time. Your heart rate slows naturally, your muscles relax. Your mind drifts off into deeper stages of sleep. But when the rhythm is chaotic, the body struggles to get into those deep restorative stages, which means even long nights in bed don't actually restore your energy the way they should. And hearing that made me curious enough to try an experiment, nothing complicated. I simply decided I would pick one bedtime and stick to it for a while. Same time every night, no exceptions unless absolutely necessary. And honestly, the first few nights felt awkward because my body wasn't used to it. Sometimes I felt sleepy earlier. Sometimes I wasn't tired yet when the clock hit that time. But I stuck with it anyway because I wanted to see what would happen. And something interesting started happening around the 5th or 6th night. I began falling asleep faster, not dramatically faster, but noticeably easier. And then one morning, I woke up before my alarm, wide awake. And I remember lying there for a moment, thinking something must be wrong, because normally I would hit snooze 2 or 3 times before dragging myself out of bed. But that morning I felt different, lighter somehow, clearer in my head. And that's when I realized maybe this consistency thing actually works. Maybe the body really does crave routine more than we think. And over the next couple of weeks, the change became more obvious. Mornings felt easier. That heavy fog in my head slowly faded. My mood during the day improved in small but noticeable ways. Even my concentration felt sharper when reading or working on things around the house. And I started understanding something sleep researchers have been saying for years, that the timing of sleep is just as important as the duration, sometimes even more important, because the brain goes through different stages during the night, and those stages follow a natural cycle. Deep sleep, lighter sleep, REM sleep, where dreaming happens. And when your bedtime shifts constantly, those cycles get disrupted, almost like someone interrupting a movie halfway through every time you try to watch it. The story never flows properly. And that's exactly what happens inside the brain when sleep schedules change too much. The cycles start at the wrong times. The deeper stages may not last long enough. And the result is that weird feeling of waking up tired even after a full night in bed. And once I understood that it actually made me look at my evenings differently, I started paying attention to the small habits that push bedtime later without us noticing. Like watching just one more episode of a show, scrolling social media for 10 minutes that somehow becomes 40 minutes, checking emails late at night even though nothing urgent is happening. Those little habits seem harmless, but they quietly push the sleep schedule later and later. And before you realize it, the body's clock is completely confused. And here's the part that really surprised me when I started reading more about this topic. Irregular sleep schedules have been linked to all kinds of health issues. Not just tiredness, but also memory problems, mood changes, even higher risks for heart disease and metabolic issues. And that might sound dramatic, but when you think about it, the brain controls everything else in the body. So if the brain is constantly tired and out of rhythm, it affects everything else too. Your immune system, your digestion, your energy levels, even your ability to handle stress. And suddenly that simple question my friend asked me about bedtime didn't seem so simple anymore. It felt like a key piece of the puzzle I had been missing all along. And the longer I practiced consistent sleep, the more convinced I became that this small habit has a huge impact. Because once your body learns the rhythm again, it starts preparing for sleep automatically. Around the same time every evening you begin to feel naturally sleepy. Not forced, Not exhausted, just gently ready to rest. And that's something many people over 60 say they've lost. That natural feeling of sleepiness at night. But often it's not age that removes it. It's the irregular schedule that confuses the body so much it stops sending those signals properly. And the amazing thing is, once the rhythm returns, those signals slowly come back too. Almost like rediscovering a forgotten ability your body always had, but couldn't use because the timing was off. How I realized that fixing this one simple mistake with my sleep schedule could actually change the way my entire day felt still surprises me. Because before that moment, I honestly believed that feeling tired every morning was just part of getting older. You hear people say that all the time. They shrug their shoulders and say, well, you know, after 60 sleep just isn't the same. And I accepted that idea for a long time without really questioning it. But the more consistent my bedtime became, the more I started noticing little changes that felt almost unbelievable at first. Like waking up before the alarm with my mind already clear instead of foggy, or walking into the kitchen in the morning and realizing I wasn't dragging my feet the way I used to. And it sounds small when you say it out loud, but those tiny differences start adding up in ways you don't expect. Because when your morning begins with energy instead of exhaustion, the entire day moves differently. Conversations feel easier, patience comes back. Even simple things like reading a book or taking a walk feel more enjoyable because your brain isn't struggling just to stay alert. And that's when I started paying attention to something experts often mention, but most people ignore. The body loves patterns. It absolutely loves routine. And when that routine becomes steady, the brain starts predicting what's coming next, which means it prepares for sleep hours. Before you even get into bed, hormones begin shifting quietly in the background. Your temperature drops slightly, your nervous system relaxes, and suddenly falling asleep doesn't feel like a battle anymore. It feels natural again, almost the way it did years ago when you didn't have to think about it so much. And the funny thing is, I didn't notice how chaotic my old sleep pattern was until I compared it to this new routine. Because before that, my evenings were unpredictable. Sometimes I stayed up late watching videos. Sometimes I scrolled on my phone, telling myself I'd only check a few messages, but somehow 30 minutes disappeared. Sometimes I drank coffee too late without thinking about it, and those little decisions quietly pushed my bedtime later and later until my brain had no idea when night was actually supposed to begin. And the body responds to that confusion by staying alert longer, which means melatonin, the hormone that helps you fall asleep, gets released later than it should. And that delay pushes the entire sleep cycle forward like dominoes falling in the wrong direction. So even if you technically sleep 8 hours, the quality of those hours isn't the same. The deep stages become shorter. The restorative phases get interrupted. And the result is waking up feeling like you never really rested at all. And I remember one particular morning about 2 weeks after starting my consistent schedule when I stepped outside with my coffee just as the sun was rising. The air was cool and quiet, and for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely awake instead of forcing myself to be awake. And in that moment, I realized something kind of powerful. Sometimes the biggest improvements in health don't come from complicated diets or expensive programs or fancy supplements. Sometimes they come from fixing one small habit that has been quietly affecting everything else. And sleep timing turned out to be that habit for me. And the more I read about it, the more fascinating it became, because scientists have studied sleep patterns for decades, and they keep finding the same thing. Consistency matters more than most people realize. In fact, some studies show that irregular sleep schedules can increase the risk of fatigue, mood swings, and memory problems over time because the brain never fully settles into a stable rhythm. It's constantly adjusting like a clock that keeps getting reset. And imagine trying to run a marathon while someone changes the distance every mile. That's what irregular sleep does to the body's internal clock. It keeps moving the finish line. And eventually, the brain gets so confused that it stops trusting the signals entirely, which is why some people say they feel wide awake at midnight, but exhausted in the morning. Their internal clock has basically flipped upside down, and I started recognizing that pattern in my own life before I fixed my schedule. There were nights when I suddenly felt energized at 11:30, even though I had been tired earlier, and mornings when the alarm felt like the worst sound in the world. But once my bedtime stabilized, something interesting happened. Those late-night bursts of energy faded away. My body began winding down naturally at the same time each evening, almost like a quiet signal saying, "Okay, it's time to rest now." And that natural signal is something many people lose after years of inconsistent sleep. They think insomnia is the problem when, in reality, the body just doesn't know when night officially begins anymore. And resetting that rhythm takes patience, but it absolutely works if you stick with it. And another thing I learned during this process was the role of light in controlling sleep cycles, because sunlight in the morning acts like a powerful reset button for the brain. It tells your body that the day has started, which helps set the timer for when melatonin should rise later at night. And when I began stepping outside each morning for even 10 minutes of natural light, I noticed my evenings became calmer too. It's almost like the brain uses that morning sunlight to mark the beginning of a countdown toward nighttime. And when that countdown becomes predictable, the body relaxes more easily when bedtime arrives. And honestly, I wish someone had explained this to me years earlier, because it would have saved me a lot of tired mornings and a lot of frustration, wondering why sleep felt harder than it used to. But sometimes we only notice these lessons when our bodies start pushing back, when fatigue becomes loud enough that we finally ask what's going wrong. And if there's one thing I've realized through this experience, it's that small habits repeated every day have a much bigger impact than we think, especially when it comes to sleep, because sleep isn't just a break from the day. It's the time when the brain repairs itself, organizes memories, balances hormones, and clears out waste products that build up while we're awake. Scientists even discovered a special cleaning system in the brain that becomes more active during deep sleep, almost like a nightly maintenance crew quietly working while the rest of the body rests. And if that process gets interrupted night after night, the brain never fully finishes its work, which might explain why irregular sleep is linked with cognitive decline over time. And that realization alone was enough to make me protect my sleep schedule more carefully than before. Not perfectly, of course, because life happens. Sometimes you stay out late with friends or watch a movie that runs longer than expected. But the goal isn't perfection. The goal is consistency most of the time, giving the body a reliable rhythm it can depend on. And once that rhythm becomes normal, the benefits ripple outward into other parts of life too. Mood stabilizes, patience increases, energy lasts longer through the afternoon instead of crashing midday. And even physical health can improve because the immune system functions better when the body gets regular restorative sleep. And that's why sleep experts often say the most underrated health habit is simply going to bed at the same time every night. It sounds almost too simple to matter, but the body responds to that predictability in powerful ways. And now whenever someone tells me they feel constantly tired, I ask them the same question my friend asked me that evening: what time do you go to bed each night? Because sometimes the answer reveals the entire problem. And maybe, as you're listening to this, you're starting to think about your own routine too. Maybe your bedtime changes every night the way mine used to. Maybe weekends push your schedule later and Monday mornings feel brutal because your body suddenly has to reset again. If that sounds familiar, then you might be dealing with the exact same hidden sleep mistake that kept me exhausted for years. And the good news is, it's surprisingly easy to start fixing it. Not overnight, but step by step. And the first step is simply choosing a bedtime you can realistically keep most nights. Something consistent enough that your brain begins recognizing it as the official start of night. And once that routine settles in, you may be amazed at how different mornings start to feel. Clearer, calmer, more energized, in ways that don't require caffeine or complicated solutions. Just a steady rhythm your body understands. And honestly, if sharing this story helps even a few people realize that their sleep struggles might come from timing rather than age or stress, then it's worth telling, because sometimes the biggest breakthroughs in health arrive disguised as simple habits we never thought twice about. And now I'm curious about you. What time do you usually go to bed? Is it the same every night, or does it shift depending on the day? Drop your answer in the comments, because seeing those patterns can be eye-opening for a lot of people. And if you know someone who constantly complains about feeling tired in the morning, consider sharing this video with them too, because they might be making this one sleep schedule mistake without realizing it. And fixing it could genuinely change how they feel every single day. So I would like to give you a suggestion. Start with a small experiment tonight. Choose a consistent bedtime and wake-up time and follow it for the next 14 days, even on weekends as much as possible. Reduce screen exposure about 30 minutes before bed. Dim the lights in your home during the evening. And try to step outside for a few minutes of sunlight in the morning. These simple habits help reset the body's internal clock faster than most people expect, and can dramatically improve the depth and quality of sleep over time.